So hello everyone, it's Kerry Griffiths, the Divorce Financial Planner at Willow Brook Lifestyle Financial Planning, and I have a guest with me today. I've got the wonderful Rhiannon Ford. She's the owner of Rhiannon Ford Divorce Consultancy, and she's a divorce and separation consultant. And I've worked with Rhiannon for quite a while now. I've been following her on LinkedIn. She has a wealth of information. She brings out so much content, and I quite often share her material because she has these brilliant handy little guides for all different aspects of divorce. And I think what's really interesting about Rhiannon is that she has a real clear kind of process that she can follow. So she really understands all aspects of divorce and has broken it down into bite-sized chunks with lots and lots of handy guides. And probably that foundation of that comes from her background as a solicitor. So I'm just going to hand over to Rhiannon. She can tell you a little bit more about that. Is that okay? Welcome along, Rhiannon.
Hello, thanks for having me. So a little bit more about me. So as you said, my background is that I was a family law solicitor. So I've got lots of experience. So I've been working with people going through divorce and separation for actually over 20 years now. But for the last 10 years, and next week's my 10-year anniversary, which is quite exciting, I've been with my consultancy service. And I left private practice because I really realised that people needed more than just the legal advice when they're going through divorce. They need so much more support and guidance. And so I wanted to sort of fill that gap for them to make sort of a positive difference for them when they're going through a difficult time.
Absolutely. And how useful is that to actually have that background to be able to then provide that guidance, fill those gaps, because you've got all of the different bases covered there, haven't you?
Yeah, I hope so. When I left private practice, I also trained as a coach. So I use my legal background and experience as well as sort of coaching techniques and tools to sort of help clients on a personal and on a sort of a practical basis for their legal process.
And you described it to me in the past, Rhiannon, about having kind of two hats and sometimes you actually say that to your clients, don't you? Okay, I need to put my coaching hat on or vice versa.
I do, because both issues come up in most sessions with clients, but actually it's quite good, I think, sometimes to differentiate between the two, because my tone might change slightly, you know, when I'm talking about legal process, talking about more technical things, but obviously when we're looking at how the client needs to be supported if they're having a difficult time, then I want to make sure they feel, we've got a good rapport and the sort of the softer side, if you like.
Yeah.
I do, and I think that's as important as helping them through the legal process itself.
Indeed, indeed. So the reason that I've invited Rhiannon along today is that I wanted to cover a really important topic, which is how you go about telling the children that their parents are getting divorced. So that's what we're going to focus on. And then we're going to just talk a little bit as well about the different child arrangements that are available for separated parents. So they're two really, really important topics. And we're just going to brush the surface of them today. And then if you want to find out more, then obviously visit Rhiannon's website, and she's got a lot of articles there, and there'll be some content and some details there that will be really, really useful for you. So we're going to kick off, Rhiannon, with how do you go about telling your children if you are getting divorced? What kind of hints and tips have you got?
Well, firstly, it's a really important conversation. So the children are going to remember what mum and dad says. So it's worth taking the time to plan. So I think the first tip I would give is planning in preparation. So getting really clear on what the children are going to be told, when they're going to be told, and how they're going to be told. So getting really clear. Children don't need to know everything. They don't need to know about the adult issues. And what and how you tell the children will depend on their age as well. So, you know, what you would talk to and how you would explain the situation to a 14-year-old is going to be very different to how you'd explain it to a 3-year-old. So first of all is planning. Really get clear on that. The second tip I would say is to cooperate with your spouse. Now, this is easier said than done, obviously, under the circumstances. So you're probably not getting on well because, you know, the relationship has broken down and you're planning to go through divorce. But you are still parents to the children, and it's really important that you work together as parents to explain an age appropriate way actually, and also only the content the children need to know. So work together, reach an agreement on what they're going to be told, when they're going to be told, so that you're coming at it as a united force, because that will reassure the children that both mum and dad are as comfortable as they can be about the decision. Now that's quite difficult when one of the parents has made the decision to divorce and perhaps the other one isn't necessarily wanting it, but it's important to put aside your personal feelings towards each other and about the situation. Focus on what's important for the children. And then my third tip really follows on from that, which is provide the children with as much reassurance as possible. So firstly, obviously make sure they know it's not their fault. It's nothing to do with them. This is about the parents and the decision that the parents have made. I actually always suggest encouraging questions, which my clients are always a little bit apprehensive about, but the children need to know that they can talk about it. They can go to either parent and ask questions to get some clarity about things. But in reassuring the children, one important tip I would say is don't make promises you can't keep. So even though you want to give positive answers to the children's questions, be very careful, because at this early stage, you won't know what the outcome's going to be regarding, say, a financial settlement, etc. So you're better off just reassuring the children that, the parents have got it covered. This is about the parents to sort out, not for the children to worry about, and that everything's going to be okay. And I would say that whatever age the children are. So, every child will always be a child, whatever age they are. So they need that reassurance from their parents about the changes that are going to be taking place in their life.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Like you say, I think the planning of it, just if you are conscious about the fact that you want to have this discussion and you want it to be the most positive that it can be, the most supportive that it can be, that's always got to be a good outcome, hasn't it? Rather than just a reactive way of actually going about it and not actually having had that time to think it through. So yeah, that's really...
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no rush to tell the children. I think a lot of people think, we must tell the children, they need to know what's going on, they need to know the truth. But actually, it's better to take a step back, really think through very carefully when they need to be told. That will depend on when changes are going to take place in their life, perhaps, or for older children, if the parents are worried that they may have overheard some conversations, and so they need to sort of make sure that they are told what's going on, so that they don't worry unnecessarily that it's a worse situation than perhaps it is. But absolutely, I think planning's really important, because they will remember that conversation.
Absolutely. And hopefully what it will do is actually have the whole divorce and the kind of approach to the whole divorce be really child-centered, and that kind of thought process of making sure that what happens for the children is at the forefront of everybody's mind.
Absolutely. I mean, any decisions made in a separation that affect the children have to be child. Both parents need to always put the children's interests first when they're making any decisions about their separation. The children are the innocent parties in the situation, and what we want to do is try for the divorce to have the least detrimental effect on them as possible. And statistics tell us and research tell us that it's not necessarily that mum and dad are getting divorced that can have that really bad impact or potentially bad impact on the children. It's more how the parents conduct themselves through the divorce. So if the parents take a sensible approach and they're focusing on what's in the best interest of the children and being child focused with their decisions, absolutely the process is going to be a lot more positive. They're going to have a much better co-parenting relationship post-divorce, but most importantly, it's going to be a much less traumatic experience for the children.
And so you've used a phrase there that I hear an awful lot. But if you're just separating and this is kind of early days for you, you might not be aware of what co-parenting is or parallel parenting, or just kind of what kind of child arrangements and what that all looks like. So do you want to pick up a bit on that topic, Rhiannon, and just kind of fill us in a little bit about that side of things?
Yeah, sure. So the phrase co-parenting really is, it talks about parents parenting together when they're not any longer a couple. So it doesn't, so the phrase co-parenting doesn't necessarily explain the parenting plan or the children arrangements. It's just, I suppose, replaces just parenting when it's then talking about separated parents.
Co-parenting often is a proactive approach as well, isn't it? It implies that, I mean, it is not a definitive thing, but it implies if you're co-parenting, you've made a choice about your parenting together, even though you're separated.
Absolutely, and it does have, it is a positive phrase, because what it's wanting to do is to illustrate to the parents that they are still a family as far as the children are concerned, and they're going to be collaborating and cooperating and working together still as parents. So you don't, your job and your role as a parent doesn't stop if you separate from your spouse.
Yeah.
And so co-parenting is what we as divorce professionals are always encouraging, and that's the phrase we would use, because it's encouraging the parents to work together as parents, rather than working separately, making separate decisions about parenting, which can happen, but the best, obviously, way for the children of parenting post-separation is when you're on the same page about how best to do that.
That makes sense. And should we talk a little bit about child arrangements?
Yeah, so when a couple separate, there's no hard and fast rule about what the arrangements should be about the children. And what I mean by that is there's no rule or law that says the children must spend a certain number of days with one parent and then a certain number of days with the other. Everything comes down to what can the parents agree between themselves. So it's very flexible, which is very positive. And actually, not to sound too nerdy, but the court system, who are our governing body, have what's called a no-order principle when it comes to children. What that means is the courts don't like getting involved in making court orders in relation to children arrangements unless they really, really have to. And that's for very good reason. They want the parents to be able to reach an agreement between themselves, because they're the ones that know the children, and it's more likely to work as well, whatever arrangement is reached, if there's an agreement. So the sorts of agreements that there can be, I would say there's probably, I mean, there's loads of different types. I've got clients using all different sorts of situations which suits them. But I would say the three main ones are, so number one would be where the children are with one parent more than the other. Now that could be for various reasons. One parent may work long hours or be abroad a lot or whatever. But what it means is they're predominantly in one house with one parent, and then they have regular time, overnight stays, visiting, whatever it may look like, with the other parent. So that's the sort of, I wouldn't even say traditional now, actually. That's one option.
Yeah.
What's becoming more and more popular, and what is very much encouraged, and I think for our generation is becoming much more natural than perhaps for our parents' generation, is what's called shared care. So this isn't any disrespect to our parents' generation, but what I find with our generation is dads, or both parents, I should say, depending, are very much hands-on with the children's upbringing and their parenting day to day. And that's very common. So there's not the old-fashioned traditional roles so much anymore. So what shared care is, well, it does what it says on the tin. The children will live partly with one parent, partly with another. It doesn't necessarily mean exactly 50-50, but it's more or less equality. So that's very popular now. And is to be encouraged, really, because how lovely for the children to have the same amount of time with each parent. And then the third option is something I think probably has been around for a little while, but only in the last few years has been given a name. Now, I don't know whose name, possibly the media, and that's what's called bird nesting.
Okay.
So bird nesting is where the children remain in the main family home,
Oh, okay.
birds, and the parents alternate in coming to stay in the home when it's their turn to have time with the children. So I've got a couple of cases where we've got that situation. So one of my cases, we've got the family home and then we've got a separate property and the parents alternate who stays there, or they might even have their own separate property and then come back to the family home. And that's come about with the thinking, I suppose, as to avoid as much disruption for the children as possible. And sometimes I suppose it might work logistically and financially, but the main focus is to keep the children in their home, and it's the parents that move around,
Beautiful.
which I think makes sense, doesn't
That's
it?
really beautiful.
It's
Yeah.
living out of suitcases.
Yeah, do you know, I've not had a client do that yet, but I really love that idea. That is so child focused, isn't it? That is all about, yeah, let's just make sure that life continues as normally as possible for them, and we'll adapt around them. That's really wonderful.
Absolutely. And the other thing that's lovely is because often if we sell the family home, well, you'll know this, obviously, being a planner, but if you sell the family home, chances are you're going to have to buy two much smaller houses for each parent. And actually what the bird nesting provides is the children remain in their home and are brought up in the house that was always intended to be the family home. And then the parents, when they're not in, whichever one it is, when they're not in that property, they only need a smaller property.
Yeah.
So it actually helps from an economic perspective.
It really does. That is a kind of like a really interesting way to look at it, because you don't need to get two houses of equal status then, do you, at all?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't require, I imagine, a fairly amicable kind of relationship, because financially you're going to be entwined for a longer period, aren't you? But yeah, that was a really interesting approach. Thank you, that's brilliant. Rhiannon, how can people find out more if they want to find out a little bit more, because I know you do have some more information or what things that they can access?
Yes, absolutely. So as you said at the beginning, I am a bit of a blogger. I do like blogs, and so I've got lots of information, and actually on my website I've got one of the sections of my blog is called Children, and so I've got lots more information on both these topics that's just obviously free to read. It's available on my website for people to look at, as well as lots of other things I've written on the subject of children and separation.
Amazing. I'll put the links in the description when we post this on YouTube, and I'll have you back along again, Rhiannon, because it's been really brilliant, and I know there's lots more expertise that you could share. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.